This is Level Up Life After 40 with Chey P
and AmyE, helping women over 40 to grow, reinvent, and stop settling for just getting by.
because your best chapter might just be ahead.
Thanks for tuning in to another fantastic episode of Level Up Life After 40 with Chey P and AmyE. And I don't know about you, but do you ever find yourself adding unnecessary stress in your life? And let me go a little bit deeper into that and saying that, we want to accomplish so much. We want to do so much. We have so much on our plates and we continue to keep adding to it. Right? What's my favorite phrase? If you want something done, ask a busy person. If you want something done, you have to do it yourself, right? Because nobody will ever do it as good as you can.
Yeah.
Or accomplish it as quickly as you can, or finish the project the way you would want it finished. Today, we want to talk about some of the unnecessary stress we put on ourselves and maybe ways that we can combat that, because there's only 24 hours in a day and there's only so much that you can accomplish. So we want to make sure that we're using that time wisely to get done what's important. So rather than just being busy, we're actually getting the work done that's going to get us to whatever goal that is for you.
Right. I think something important to note is that we may not even consider it unnecessary stress. We might think that the things that you and I are about to mention are just part of life. Like, no, this is just normal. This is how it's supposed to be. And they may not even perceive that it's unnecessary stress. So I think if you're one of those people that is constantly feeling like they're just stressed, obviously, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word right now, yeah, this episode is for you because you might be able to pinpoint some things and just be like, okay, yeah, that is me, or hmm, okay.
Right. Like, how many times do you wake up, the weight of the world is on my shoulders? You feel like you are carrying the heavy lifting of everything, whether it's your career, your kids, your household, your family, your aging parents. Everything seems to fall on us. It's like we wake up every morning with a 50-pound block on our shoulders
Mhm.
that's constantly wearing us and tearing us down. I don't know about you, but I used to have that feeling quite often. This constant running and gunning and running and gunning. And as people would offer to try to help me, oh, no, I can do it myself. Because in
Mhm.
my opinion, it would take me too long to show them how to do it. It's just so much easier to just get it done, right? And that's something that is really hard as a type A person to let go of. That's just creating unnecessary stress for myself.
I think it's funny because that was your first and probably biggest point that you came up with was you want things done in a particular manner, so then you overwhelm yourself because you're gonna do it all instead of getting help. And there's also people who feel like they just don't even wanna ask for help, and people want to help other people. Typically, people have an innate thing with wanting to help other people, but we're actually gonna talk about the danger of that later as well. So, Amy, how do you get around that? Um, and actually, before you answer that, I saw something where yeah, sometimes you do have the cost of teaching somebody how to do something, but if you can look ahead to the payoff, like, is this the hill we're dying on at this juncture of our lives? But go
You're,
ahead. So how do you address it?
I've learned as I've gotten older to just let things go. And I think when my daughter turned 18, it was kind of that pivotal let it go moment. Because for most of us out there, our kids are probably getting older and aging out. Once they turn 18, they're adults. They might still live under your roof, but the law of curfew doesn't necessarily apply to them anymore. They're 18, they're old enough to vote, they're old enough to enlist in the military. When it comes to HIPAA, they're old enough to go to the doctor themselves and they don't have to tell you what their results were. By 18, they're technically adults. And I needed to learn to let that control over how she was cleaning her room, how she was doing things. I just had to learn to let that go because she could move out at any point now and she's going to have to figure it out on her own.
Do you
And it's
feel like that letting go helped relieve some stress that you were carrying, or do you feel more stressed because you feel like you've relinquish control in an area of your life?
Letting go has helped relieve a lot of stress. Now, there's still that stress of you worry about your kids. Everybody's going to worry about their kid until the day they die. That's just innately something that we as parents do. But I think the important lesson to learn here is that we're so worried about them making mistakes and we don't want them to make the same mistakes that we did. So we push them in a certain direction, tell them what kind of classes to take. It says, or I didn't do this in high school and this is something I regret. So I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. We mean it with love and good intention. But at the end of the day, I made those mistakes and it actually made me a better person. I was able to learn from those mistakes. So I'm actually probably doing a disservice to my kid by not letting her stumble and trip and fall and have to figure out how to pick herself back up.
Mhm.
It's an
And
important life lesson and it's hard. Like I said, it's hard as a mom because we don't want to see our kids make mistakes. We certainly don't want to see them fail. But failure isn't necessarily a bad thing. And that's something that I learned. Quitting is a bad thing. Failure is not a bad thing. And allowing her to make some mistakes here and there, she's learned from them. And I've learned that it's okay. It's okay to let that go.
Mhm. And when you let that go, as far as, like, that level of control, did it translate into the other areas of your life of letting people do things that you would normally do yourself because you want them done the right way? It's making me think, I think it was Mad TV, they had a skit where somebody was calling IT, and so they'd be doing something, the IT guy would go, "Move," and then just do it himself. Now, my IT guy doesn't do that because he wants me to learn. He'll go, "Click. No, farther right. No, your other right." But do you feel that you kinda are allowing a little more imperfection, so to speak, into your life?
Yes. I think that, the phrase done is better than perfect has definitely moved itself more into my life as I've gotten older. And let's say I'd like to say wiser.
Mhm,
Everything had to be perfect. Your house always had to be perfectly clean. You always had to have the perfect amount of hors d'oeuvres, snacks, parties, food. I was very concerned about what people thought of me,
mm.
right? It was all about perception. And so I would add this unnecessary, and these are my friends and family. My family doesn't care.
Well, and I think your phrase of worried about what other people are gonna think, that's the unnecessary stress. That is the key. It's
Mhm.
because what are people going to think of me? And I think if that is the mentality that you run through life with, that might be an area of unnecessary stress for you. And as a coach, I can help you work through that.
Thank you. Because we were talking before we started recording, and I think by dialing down into it, this was a really
Mhm,
good exercise for myself.
mhm,
Think about it, ladies. What is it that is stressing you out?
mhm.
And then why is that stressing you out? And then keep asking yourself why. And you'll
Yeah.
come down to the root cause where because in my situation, it was all about, perception
Mhm.
and wanting to seem like everything was perfect. And then at this stage of my life, done is better than perfect.
Yeah. And we did talk about that in a previous episode of getting to the 7 levels of why, which I picked up from Dean Graziosi, because even your first 3 or 4 answers might be superficial. Because like, we can talk about what other people think of you, but you still might have to do a little bit deeper dive into why that matters. So we kinda talked about, and I don't know if it's unnecessary stress, like worrying about your kids. I think that's just life. But I do think, getting help and not expecting everything to be perfect. I mean, a great example, honestly, is me turning over editing to you. It's been years, and you know how painful that was. And in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, well, I can still go back and listen to what she edits and fix it if I don't like it. And that kind of takes away from the delegation. But it's funny because when you talk about what other people think, because I had to ask myself, like, what is my problem with Amy editing? Because I've told you many times, you're not going to take out the same stuff that I would have taken out. And the problem with Amy is that she likes me and she likes everything I say and she thinks I'm funny and that you know, if I've said it, it should be shared, and I am not of the same opinion, and it did come down to, I don't know what people are gonna think. Are people going to interpret it wrong? Because everybody finds a reason to get their feelings hurt. You can leave this in. Everybody finds a reason to get feelings hurt, so it's almost like I would try to just have benign statements in there, but you can't go through life doing that. I can't worry that someone's gonna cry over something that I said because they internalized it in a manner that I didn't necessarily mean or whatever. So, yeah, it did come down to that where I didn't think my way was necessarily better than your way, but I definitely had a reason for why I wanted to do it. So you might have to examine, what is it about your way that's so much better?
Mhm. That has a little bit to do with the controlling aspect. There are certain things in life that are not in our control, so we as humans gravitate towards things that we can control, right?
Oh, yeah.
We joke around, we can't control the weather, but I can control what I'm wearing to be prepared for said weather.
Mhm,
Not the best example, but you kinda know where I'm going at.
mhm. Yeah. People like to have that semblance of control wherever they
Mhm,
can. So that's a good point, but if there's something in your life, even house cleaning, it's like carrying every single burden that's out there, like thinking that every task has to be on you when there's somebody perfectly capable of doing it, just let them. It's
mhm.
okay. And when I say delegate, I don't mean that in like a bossy kind of manner. I mean, like, share the load. With you, you how many times did you say, "I'm happy to help you, you just need to let me," or "Just show me how to do it, and I'll take that over." If people wanna help you, let them, and I know some other people where they will help others, but for whatever reason, don't think they want to accept help. So, if you have that issue too, you might need to examine that a little bit as well. Done is better than perfect. Don't be afraid to accept help, and in some cases, don't be afraid to ask for help. I asked for help. In fact, Brett and I were talking because I have this giant crate that I got for my ferret, but I tote Rocky in it because it's big, it's easy. Then Rocky's my cat. It's easy to get him in it because he's a little bit feral and he will try to murder you when you're trying to crate him. So I'm trying to, instead of trying to stuff him in a tiny door crate, I have this big crate. So Brett made the comment, the other day, like, "You need to stop feeding this cat, this thing's getting heavy." And, and Rocky's perfectly healthy anyway. But, I told him, I said, "Yeah, when they offer me help at the vet, I take it because they always ask, and I don't know if they're thinking I'm gonna go, 'Oh, no, I've got it.' I'm like, 'Yeah, I sure would appreciate help.' 'Yep, go ahead and lift it in the car, I'm fine with that." So, there's no shame in my game with some of this stuff, and yeah, you wanna take my groceries out to the car? Have at it.
Good for you. I sometimes carry that burden because being a single mom, I operate without a safety net. It's on my badge of courage. If something goes wrong, I have to fix it myself. I don't have a man in my life or somebody that's close to me that is handy. If my faucet goes berserk, I either have to try to fix it myself watching a YouTube video or I have to call a plumber. I do everything by myself and blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, if it's not bringing me happiness, why am I doing it? If it's that miserable, then why don't I just hire it out?
Mhm. Yeah, and if you have the capability, why not? Now, if it's something like, "Yeah, I'm pretty excited to learn my own plumbing or whatever," do it.
Mhm.
I just wanna point out because when I was visiting you one time, Liv had some friends over, and they made a mess of the kitchen, like, they made a mess of the kitchen, but when we got up the next day, the kitchen was clean, and Amy made the comment, she's like, "Well, it's not the way I would have done it, but at least they cleaned it." Maybe you wipe the counters down one more time, but otherwise they at least did it. I felt your ability to let that go was pretty good because I've known you for a long time.
That night could have gone really south.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you were almost preemptively anticipating the kitchen being a disaster hole when you got up the next day, but you're like, "Whatever, I'll deal with it tomorrow." So that
Mhm.
was good, but then when you got up the next day, I think you were pleasantly surprised.
I was. You said it best. I was pleasantly surprised they actually did clean up.
Yeah. So maybe another stress remover is, don't preemptively expect the worst of a situation. If the worst happens, you can deal with it at that juncture. Now, we know I catastrophize, so this is a great lesson for me, but if if you're already anticipating being something being horrible or something not going well, you are just stressing yourself out
Mhm.
and, potentially for no good reason. So that's
Yep.
another area of unnecessary stress. If you start going down that path, just be like, "You know what? I'm not gonna worry about it." And especially if something's an easy fix. I mean, cleaning the kitchen, not a difficult fix.
Right.
I actually saw a speaker one time, and people might disagree with me here, but he said, "If a problem can be solved with money, it's not a problem." And
You're right.
some things might cost a lot of money, but when you really get down to the nitty-gritty, if your kid's healthy, do you ultimately care how she cleaned the kitchen? Now, one of the other things that I learned, because I just finished mod 3 of my coaching with IPEC, and one of the things with IPEC, and I can't think of his last name, first name's Bruce, but he's got the 7 levels of energy. One of the things that you deep dive into with this coaching are your energy levels. And there's catabolic and there's anabolic. Okay. So your catabolic energy is like 1 and 2. Those are more destructive forces. And those are the things we get into when we are stressed typically. Most people will kind of default to those. Level 1, you're just kind of like, "Ugh, woe is me. This never works out. Whatever. Why bother?"
Okay.
Level 2, and these are very generalized things that I'm saying here.
And it's the Reader's Digest version, but,
Very much
contact
so.
you for a more of a deep dive in a
Yeah,
session.
very
Yeah,
much
okay, go
so,
ahead.
especially, yeah, because some of it's kind of for time's sake here too. Level 2 is usually and level 1 is the kind of where it's no activity, where you're laying up on the couch and stuff like that. Level 2, that's usually where there's a little more action, but it's usually that fighting for what I want. You were level 2 when you're going to bed thinking, "I'm gonna have to clean this kitchen tomorrow." So,
Mhm.
you're in this state of, like, aggravation, and that's not always a healthy way to be. It's, those catabolic energies can be good, they do serve a little bit of purpose, but typically you don't wanna stay in them for too long. Now the anabolic things, those are more constructive areas, and I'm just gonna hit on 2, real quickly. Level 4, those are people who typically really care about other people, and it brings them pleasure to take care of other people. Level 5, you have a lot of creativity and stuff like that, and those sound wonderful until you don't have boundaries with them. And an example that I will give you, like, for level 4, and I'll use kids as an example. You give to your children, you love your children, you wanna do for your children, but when they're feeling ungrateful, you're not ever feeling like it's reciprocated, that can cause you to drop down into a "nobody ever helps me, when is it gonna be my turn?" So, you kinda have to be mindful at that level of how much you give, and that even goes for the altruistic things. That goes to having boundaries and saying no, because we will take on unnecessary stress because of our giving nature, but then you can get burned out, you can become overwhelmed. In fact, if you don't mind my talking about what's going on with you right now,
Go
you love dogs, you love your rescue, but right now you have 8 dogs in your house. How you feeling right now, Amy?
It's it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
I've realized I took on a little bit more than I can chew here. So obviously the goal is that once they get adopted, that I'm not going to take on another until I kind of clear out the house a little bit. Going back to what you said, when you start taking on too much and you feel like you're the one that's doing all the work and you almost start feeling resentment. I'm going to use the example of an elderly parent. Are you the sibling that is always showing up for the doctor's appointments? Are you the one that's always running over there to do errands, groceries, fix something when you have 2 or 3 other siblings that are completely available and capable?
Mm,
Sometimes it comes down to the one sibling is out of state, so they can't help out, so it all falls on us. So not only do you start feeling resentment towards your siblings for not showing up, but it unfortunately manifests in how you take care of your parents.
mhm. A great example.
Instead of it turning into something that you do out of love and joy, it's now turned into a chore.
Mhm. Yep. And a good stress release for that is, 1, your siblings need to participate somehow. And if they're not local, I get it, but maybe they can visit and just give you a weekend off. Or maybe they could help pay for a sitter so you can at least get a little bit of a break. But that's something that should be looked at. This would be a separate episode, but it's important to kind of plan for those things ahead. Now, I'm not saying preemptively plan to be stressed about your parents, but I would preemptively plan how you're going to take care of them should the need arise.
And in an age where everything can get delivered, it's not you that always has to be running to Target and the grocery store.
Mhm.
That sibling that lives out of state can certainly use some of their money and hire a delivery service.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
why DoorDash and Peapod exist.
Exactly. So that's a very good example because yes, you do love your parents, you do want to take care of them, and yet we can give too much. But it's also how often do you inherit someone's problems? Like there's things going on, you want to help people, but then you're taking on problems and trying to figure out things for other people that are not necessarily in your little red wagon to pull. I have done that. In fact, Brett is the one that really pointed it out to me because I'm like, "Oh, this is going on. What should I do?" He's like, "That's not your problem." And he's not saying it ugly. He's not saying it in an ugly manner. But he's like, "Why do you feel like you need to inherit people's problems? They're grown. They can figure it out. They can fix it." So look at where you might be inheriting problems. And I'm not talking about your kiddos, although I think a lot of times and you've noticed this and you've kinda, like, had to let go where you're gonna wanna fix things for your kids, but maybe not. And sometimes I don't think your kids want you to.
No, they
So
kind of want to figure it out for themselves.
mhm. So look where you're giving up too much. Look where maybe you need to say no, and it is okay to say no. So, alright. Did you have anything else to that point before I move on to the next one? And this one just kinda resonated with me, and, this is fresh on my mind because this was something that was just talked about literally to me yesterday. And where I typically reside is a level 5, although it's funny because it's not what I would have guessed, honestly, just because of my level of snark. Um, I like activity and stuff like that and having new ideas, and it's all very exciting, and I've talked about this before that while this can be a good thing, I also, on the flip side, don't have a boundary in place with some of it, and so I will sign up for literally everything, and it's costing me money, it's costing me time, and then I feel like, "Okay, I paid for this," or, "I decided to do this, and I need to go ahead and get going on it," and I'll have, like, 80 things on my plate, and then, of course, I'm feeling stressed. And then I will take it out on other people, and I almost get into not that like the level 2 we talked about where you're kinda angry, I'll get into the level 1, and I'll feel guilty because why did I sign up for so much stuff? Or I'll feel like I don't even know where to start because I have so much on my plate. So, while you can have these really good things, everything still needs a check because we can always overburden ourselves even though we can have these like higher levels of energy and be in a good place, unless we have boundaries, it can slip. So I think being aware of some of the dangers that are there, I think could kind of help us better cope and not take on unnecessary stress or fall into the trap of unnecessary stress. And just in case anyone cares, I am doing a lot better. There's a lot that I do not sign up for now. In fact, I went through and a lot of the programs, apps, um, memberships and stuff that I had signed up for, I canceled a majority of them. And I was really careful because a lot of them, they're great. I just wasn't using them. And it really did relieve it because I didn't have the feeling of, "Oh, I really need to do this," or, "I should engage in this." So if you're not using it, just get rid of it.
Mhm.
Get it off your phone.
Cheyenne learned to say no.
Ish.
Ish. Learn to say no-ish. Well, it sounds silly, but if we say no, we have to come up with a reason why.
Mhm.
No is no.
Yeah.
For some reason, we talked a little about this in our last platform on keeping it together after 40. When we say no, it's almost like we have to justify ourselves as to why.
Mhm.
You don't owe anybody an explanation or an apology.
Mm-mm. Or if someone asks me to do a favor and I'm unable to do that, you don't need to know why. It's none of your business. I could be getting a colonoscopy and don't want to share that with you.
I love that. A wise woman once said that when, she gets asked to do certain things, when she just says no, and then if somebody says, well, why not? It's just not the right season in my life.
Mhm. Yeah.
I use that phrase often. It's
Mhm.
not saying never.
Mhm.
It's just saying no right now,
Yeah.
and it's
And I
okay.
yeah. Well, and I even had someone ask me to do something and it's something I had done before and I don't necessarily mind doing, but I just remember at the time I thought just right now I can't.
It would have been adding an unnecessary stress in your
That
life.
seems so on topic, Amy. Look at you. People think you're just pretty.
Once again, that's what we're talking about today. So I don't know, just to wrap it up, Cheyenne, do you have any more insight or anything else that you want to bring up?
No, I think for me, my big takeaways, because I honestly didn't even think about when you brought up like letting it go. Sometimes letting things go is huge. And if you're having trouble letting something go, really examine why. And don't just do a superficial why, because I really just had the aha moment like with Amy. It wasn't necessarily control and doing it my way. It was what will the perception of me be if Amy doesn't edit it the way I want? So really examine that. And saying no, I think, is probably the biggest thing. Saying no and having boundaries, whether it's with ourselves or with other people. But again, maybe look at why that's a problem. And even though you want to love and care for people, you can't love and care for everybody, especially if you're not loving and caring for yourself.
And then to
So,
just kind of wrap up another point of using delegation, allow others to help you, allow other people, especially when they offer. It's okay to say yes. I would love some help with that.
yeah,
Taking it all on yourself is not making your life any easier, especially when you're later on saying, I do this all myself and nobody helps me and woe is me. Well, kind of did it to myself because I didn't allow somebody that offered to help. So taking help when it's offered is okay.
yeah. Because odds are, if they offered, they want to.
Mhm.
I know, and this might go along with saying no, but I don't offer unless I'm willing to do it, like for real. Like if I'm willing to do it without feeling that resentment or like taken advantage of or whatever. So if somebody offers, odds are they really genuinely do want to help you. So, all right. I'm done. Those are my points. Amy, go ahead and take us home.
You can find us on the socials, Facebook, Instagram. Thank you so
YouTube.
much. YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. And always remember, you got this. Just a quick reminder, everything we share on this podcast is for inspirational, personal growth, and real life conversation. We're not doctors, therapists, financial advisors, or legal experts. Just two women sharing experiences, lessons, and stories to help you level up your life. Always do what's best for you and seek out qualified professionals when you need specific guidance. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and remember, you got this.